Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star's daily sports podcast. It's Wednesday, March 3rd, and I'm Blair Kerkhoff. We're talking Missouri Tigers today, and joining us is Mizzou radio analyst Chris Gervino. Chris was the longtime sports director at KOUM in Columbia. He retired from that role last year, but continues to provide analysis for basketball broadcasts with Mike Kelly and sideline reporting for Missouri football games. We spoke about this Mizzou season, which continues tonight at Florida. We talked about the fast start this year for Cuonzo Martin's team and what Mizzou has to do to shake off this little bit of a losing skid of late. Chris and I also spent a little time talking spring football, which has started for the Tigers. After a break, you'll hear from Cuonzo Martin, who met with reporters on Tuesday. So let's get started talking Missouri sports with Chris Gervino.
Hi, Blair.
Chris, how you doing?
I'm well. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. I really appreciate you doing this. Helps me out of...
Of course. It's good to see you.
Yeah, you too, buddy. I've been... so we lost our Missouri beat writer, and I've got to fill in for a little while. And so what that did was it basically took a Missouri guest out of my weekly podcast because I'd always get our beat writer on. Or a daily podcast.
Where did he go? What happened?
Well, his name was Soichi Terada. And
Soichi. Yeah. No, I know him. I didn't know. Is he leaving?
He left to go to cover the Celtics for the Springfield, Massachusetts paper. So this was like 2 weeks ago.
I did not realize. I just saw him, it seemed like last week.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago. So we got a bit of a hiring freeze, and so we're having to kind of make do with what we have in the office to cover Mizzou for a few months, several weeks it looks like. So, oh well. But hey, you know what it does?
Does that mean we might see you
a little more often? But it gets me reconnected with some people that which I enjoy doing actually, and people like yourself, and I spent some time with Jim Sturk the other day, and Cuonzo, and really I've never gotten to know Eli. He seems like a really good dude. So yeah. So like I said, we do a daily podcast. Let's start.
Sure.
Let's start by I will have introduced you, so we're just going to jump right in. Chris, I just want to, for me coming to Missouri when I have here toward the end of the basketball season, that I wanted to get your interpretation of this Missouri basketball team, because they've lost 4 out of 5 going into the Florida game tonight. But the team that I've seen on TV most of the year has been terrific. And based on preseason expectations, a very good season for Missouri basketball right now. Let's go through this season, and I guess we'll start in the present tense. What do you think has been the issues for Missouri as they lose 4 out of 5 going to play the Gators tonight?
Right. Blair, it's good to be with you. I think, really Missouri has this difficult stretch of 4 losses in 5 games and had a 3-game losing streak. And for whatever reason, the defense really left the Tigers for a few games. Those 3 games they lost, I believe they allowed an average of 82 points, which is so unlike them. They're usually a strong half-court defensive team under Cuonzo Martin, and that's really his reputation over years and years of coaching. But they got away from their defensive abilities, so to speak, in those 3 losses. They had been giving up just under 70 per game in the first 9 conference games. Then they hit the skids and allowed, like I said, 82 points over the 3 losses. And they've reeled it back in a little bit. Part of it's scheduling. It's interesting. Ole Miss has not been a world beater over the years, but they've beat Missouri 15 of 18 times that they've met, most of those in the SEC. And I really think it's been a tough matchup, obviously, for Missouri. I think that the 1-3-1 matchup zone has given the Tigers trouble over the years. And Ole Miss, if you look at them, they've got a lot of really long athletic players. They have 4 or 5 guys, 6'6" to 6'9". Missouri's just not built that way. They have a couple of bigger, taller guys. And that's just my educated, hopefully, guess at why they've had trouble with Ole Miss. But they got them twice in this stretch of 4 losses in 5 games. The problem is now you're going into Florida tonight. they've won 3 in a row and 7 of 9. They look really good as I prepare for this game. I mean, lead the league in shooting in all categories, and they've been terrific defensively in their 3-game winning streak. And then you've got a talented LSU team coming to Columbia. So the Tigers of Mizzou are really up against it now, and this is crunch time for them after what you said, accurately so. It's been a really good year. Wins over Illinois, Oregon, Alabama, Tennessee. I mean, some good wins there, but lately it's been difficult.
Yeah, I did some bracketology of my own here earlier today, and I think the Tigers are safely in. I think the quality of opponents remaining will allow Missouri to be in the tournament. To be honest with you, I think if they had made up the Texas A&M and Vanderbilt games, they wouldn't have got, even if they had won, they wouldn't have gotten much. There wouldn't have been quality wins for the Tigers. Now they have an opportunity against Florida and LSU on Saturday to close out the regular season. And then, of course, a worthy opponent in the whoever they play early in the SEC tournament to really build on their credentials. But listen, even if the worst happens, and Missouri doesn't win again, I still think the Tigers are going to be in the NCAA tournament. You just don't want to, I guess you don't want to leave it to that sort of chance that to have this losing streak continue. I really have liked what I've seen from this Tigers team most of the season. I love how that Pinson has really taken charge at point guard, and Jeremiah Tillman, I think, has made himself a lot of money this year as a pro prospect. And I mean, we'll see who all returns next season for the Tigers, but with the new rules and everybody's eligible to return. But I think Cuonzo Martin has done a really nice job with this team, senior experienced team, and maybe they'll figure out a way here in the next week, 2 weeks before the NCAA tournament starts to regain that whatever it was they had back in December and January.
Well, hopefully that's the case, because they've got such an experienced group of talented guys who probably, collectively will obviously only be together for these last few weeks of the season, regardless of how many games they play. And, you mentioned Jeremiah Tillman, and that's a guy I should have mentioned, obviously, about the losing skid that happened right when he was absent. He found out about the death of a grandparent, I think right about the outset of the Ole Miss game or just ahead of that. And he played, I believe, that one. He did play. And then he missed 2. And, of course, Missouri lost all 3 of those games. Then he comes back, they're whole again. They win at South Carolina, looked pretty good, but then had that dreaded Ole Miss jinx with the Rebels. So we'll see. But, you'd like to think they will gather themselves and regroup. And I think you heard also, as I did when Mizzou had media availability this week, that Torrance Watson was saying that, Drew Buggs, of all people, the first-year player here, but a graduate student, older guy who wants to be a coach, brought the guys together and said, look, this is the last time we have this locker room. It's the last time we're all together as a group of guys. It's probably only a few weeks one way or the other. So let's make the most of it. I thought that was a sign of maturity. Whether it got through, whether it'll manifest itself in wins, who knows? But, it's an experienced group that's been with Cuonzo Martin, and we saw what they could do earlier this season when they got out to that, number 10 national ranking, and they were 13-3 and 6-3 in the league. And I think they were projected back then, and I know it was early, as a number 3 national seed in the tournament. So you just hate to see the tumble late in the year, because obviously that affects seeding if, in fact, they make the tournament. And I'm with you. I think they're in pretty good shape, but you just don't want to leave it to chance or hurt your own cause, so to speak, down the stretch.
So Cuonzo Martin is in the 4th of a 7-year deal. And I know Jim Sturck actually was asked point blank at a media availability last week, isn't it about time to think about extending Cuonzo? And he said yes. I mean, it is. And if the Tigers do go to the NCAA tournament this year, it'll be the second one in 4 years for Cuonzo Martin. The national expectations for this Missouri basketball team weren't high. Were they 10th? Were they picked 10th, I think, in the preseason?
Correct.
In the SEC.
Yeah, 10th.
They'll finish higher than that, of course. But what are your thoughts on the progress that Cuonzo Martin has made with this program and where things stand? Look, there's still, the book on this season is yet to be completed, and maybe a lot of it depends on what happens in these next few weeks to draw some kind of evaluation. But just what have you seen from Cuonzo Martin, and do you think we'll see him at Missouri for quite a while?
I would think so. You know, he was at his previous stops for exactly 3 years each, Missouri State, Tennessee, and Cal as head coach. Now, this is his fourth year. He's 64-53 overall. And I, like you, think he'll take the team to the tournament for the second time in 4 years. They finished fifth in his first season, even without Michael Porter, when he missed, all but 3 games. And, this year, who knows where they're going to finish. I mean, they're, I guess, seventh roughly as we visit heading into Wednesday's game, but they could finish anywhere, probably from realistically, I'd say 5 to 9 about now, somewhere in that range. And so split the difference, they'd be 7. So it's basically a top half of the league finish. And I get it, barely 7 of 14. But, yeah, he's such a solid guy. He's close to home where he's from in East St. Louis. I know fans always want more, and that's what make them fans. And they don't like to hear this. People don't like excuses. But, they've had a lot of injuries, Blair, since that first year. I mean, you look at Michael Porter, who was here just the 1 year, and they did okay without him. But then Jonte Porter for the next year, Jeremiah Tillman and Mark Smith, each of the last 2 years missed many games with injuries. They're up to more than 100 games missed in injuries over the last 3 years coming into this season. And the big years, and the big point in this statement is years 2 and 3, when they didn't make the NCAA tournament. And of course, there was no tournament last year, but they weren't headed that way, it appeared. They missed a lot of key guys. I mean, all starting players, and serious rotational minute players with Michael the whole first year, and then Jonte the next year, and then Tillman and Mark Smith each of the last 2 years. And Tillman misses a couple games this year. So he's never really had his full group together other than much of this year. And I think we saw how good they could be early. They have to sustain that and kind of bring that back. But I sure can't imagine, especially in COVID times with everything going on, Missouri would think about running him off and not wanting him to be around. And hopefully the feeling is mutual. I do think he's an attractive candidate still to some other schools that have openings because he is a solid guy and teacher. And he had a great line. They asked when he was first year hired here about Missouri's recent, at that point, NCAA troubles and how does he view compliance. And you may remember this. He said, "I am compliance." And I thought that was a great line. So he really does everything right. Obviously, fans wanted and hoped for more wins. I thought this could be a big season and surpass the 10th place pick. And I think they will, maybe just barely, but I think they will. But I think you're right. At least the feeling around him will, I think, right or wrong, be affected greatly by the next few weeks. Does the team bounce back, make a good showing, a good run? You can define that however you want, but certainly wins along the way. Or do they just slide away, which would be, of course, the worst case scenario? And I got to tell you, they got 2 tough opponents this week. Florida's going to be really tough in Gainesville. Then who knows about LSU and beyond?
I agree. I think he checks so many boxes for Missouri. I think maybe just get some NCAA tournament success to kind of complete the resume for him. How long has it been since the Tigers have won an NCAA tournament game? It's been a decade, I think.
Oh, it's been years. Yeah, you go all the way back because they lost. It would have been, they lost, of course, in Norfolk State in 2012, the infamous first round game, and they lost the next year to Colorado State in 2013. So you have to go all the way back to Mike Anderson's days when they won. Right, they beat Clemson,
right,
up in Buffalo, and then lost to West Virginia, and then lost to Cincinnati in Anderson's last game. So there you go. And that's why 2 trips in 4 years, if it happens, if you're realistic, folks, is pretty good given the last decade or so, at least come March.
Absolutely. Hey, Chris, before we wrap it up, let me get a thought on spring football. It has started at Missouri, and we've had a couple of media opportunities with Coach Eli Drinkwitz and some players. I was very impressed with his first season out for the Tigers. And those wins against LSU and Arkansas still resonate with me, and the way Missouri won those games. I know it was 5-5, and they didn't get to play in the bowl game against Iowa because of the COVID protocols. But I get a sense there are just some good vibes around the football program right now. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think so. Like a lot of folks, I think if we're honest with ourselves, I didn't expect Missouri to win 5 games last season with an all-SEC 10-game schedule. They had the really impressive win against LSU and got the Kentucky hoax away, at least for a season. They lost 4 in a row to Kentucky. And, of course, you mentioned the Arkansas win, among others. So I think there is. They've got to shore up the defense, obviously. They gave up about 50 points a game the last 3 games, which wasn't great. But they've really made pretty much wholesale changes with the defensive coaching staff. And I think the recruiting seems promising. You know, everybody talks a good game about how well they recruited, but in this case, Missouri really got, a good solid half dozen players from St. Louis that were high-level players. And you're never going to get them all when you're dealing, with the Ohio States and Notre Dames and even Alabama's and those schools. But you got to get your share of them, especially as the home state school and most of them. And they definitely did that really across the board, offense and defense. I think they really helped themselves by kind of securing most of the St. Louis area recruits and better than they've done, frankly, in recent years. So we'll see.
Yep, Connor Bazelak back at quarterback. And, I liked how kind of self-critical he was when speaking with him last week. He says there are some specific things he wants to work on in spring football. I just thought, look, he could have kind of taken a victory lap in his first season as a starter last year, but he said, nope, there are plenty of things to work on, and that's what spring is about for him. So also excited to see Steve Wilkes, the new defensive coordinator, in action for the Tigers. So, hey, Chris, I have really enjoyed this visit. Great catching up with you again, and I'll be seeing more of you here over the next few months.
Hey, thanks, Blair. I look forward to that. Thank you.
Now let's hear from Missouri basketball coach Cuonzo Martin, who covered a range of topics on Tuesday, starting with how he communicates NCAA tournament bracket projections with his team. Hey, Cuonzo, do you talk about, what's at stake, the types of things that we talk about, projections, tournament brackets, and seeding? Do you talk to your team about that?
Yeah, we talk about it. Just in ways to make them better understand the task at hand, not to add any added pressures. And then, oftentimes what I try to do, I pull certain guys to the side that I think have a pulse to be able to relay certain things to his teammates or their teammates. So, yes, do we talk about all of yes?
Gabe?
Yeah, Cuonzo, there have been a number of games before and after that you've told us, for your offense to work, you need X to be more aggressive and attack more. And every time I think you've said, hey, this isn't anything new. We've talked about this before. So how do you do you have to find different ways to say it, or how do you get a message to sink in that seems to have been kind of a recurring problem?
Well, I think when you're in heavy rotation as a basketball player, you understand your assignment, what you need to do to be successful. Those are things that we continue to work toward and just finding answers and solutions to try to help X. Because it's not as if we're talking about a guy that's, trying to get minutes coming off the bench, struggling. Like, for example, Thomas Watson, trying to get him minutes to get him going and all that. But you're talking about a guy that's in rotation and a guy that you count on certain production and at the point guard position. Again, it's just, I think now it's just a matter of doing. Doing what your assignment is and what's asked of you, pushing the ball, putting pressure on the defense, all those things. And everything else takes care of itself. And it's just same thing if Drew Smith is not the guy that he normally is, or he's passive, he's not defending at the level. That's hard because you count on that certain production. So you count on that production and pushing the ball. And whether X scores 5 points, 25 points, it's how he's operating, and everybody else is involved with what's going on within the offense. But if that part becomes stagnant, now you have to find other answers.
Dave Matter.
Cuonzo, do you feel like you guys are safely in the NCAA tournament, or how are you approaching that part of it, just whether you're in or not?
Well, I feel like we're safely in, but that's not necessarily my talks to the guys. It's getting better, and it's not necessarily you broke down here and there, you're not playing hard. Just like, let's be consistent in what we're doing. And I think that's the biggest thing. But no, I think we're safely in, but that's not even the topic for me. It's about let's get better. Let's win a game at Florida. And these are the things we need to do to win the game.
Mitch.
So speaking of Florida, they've held their last 3 opponents to pretty low shooting percentage in these wins. I guess what have they done well on defense, and how do you kind of attack that?
Well, they've done a good job, one, in taking care of the ball when they need to and not giving up live ball turnovers. That's the first thing, because you always have to look at that. And even if a team turns the ball over, you're not giving up live ball turnovers. So give them a chance when they score the ball to set their defense. And oftentimes when they score the ball in a three-quarter court press or sometimes a full court press, depending on situations, then they finish the game down the stretch in a kind of a matchup zone against Kentucky. They played, and they don't play it all the time. They play it in certain teams. It depends on how successful they are, how long they stay in it. And then, just getting rebounds, forcing teams to do things I guess you don't want to do, and make it a half-court game. And I think the best thing, same thing we talk to our guys about, you want teams to be able to score in the half court. Live ball turnovers can cost you. Bad shots can cost you. So you want to have your defense set. Now you can defend at a high level.
Internet.
Cuonzo, with all the potential distractions of senior day and bracketology and SEC tournament and all that stuff, what's kind of the message to your group about, hey, this time of year, this week, this is where I need your focus and where your head to be?
Well, a couple of things. We always talk about let's continue to get better, because there's a lot of basketball, but also the other thing is just embrace the preparation of what's on the floor. I think those are the key things, because it's not as if you're adding a lot of new things this time of year. And it's not as if you're adding more guys to your roster. So you know who you are. You know what makes you successful. So it's understanding what makes me successful as an individual player and what makes us successful as a team. And I think those are the biggest things. But I just think embracing the preparation and understanding the scouting report, the game plan, the walkthrough, the film study, take that to the game. And allow your only issues, if anything, you call them issues, missed shots. Missed shots, a breakdown here, but it can't be a consistent breakdown. Live ball turnovers, multiple live ball turnovers, a poor block out here and there, because those things add up and then it becomes a ball game.
Brough.
Hey, Cuonzo, how you doing?
Right.
Good. Hey, I just we've talked a little bit about this before, but we're closing in on the anniversary of everything shutting down for COVID, and I just wonder if you recall what you were thinking as that started happening, and maybe in what ways you think your perspective on the meaning of sports might have changed since then.
Well,
I'll follow up, RJ.
I remember sitting in a hotel and really was talking to Mike Kelly, and all of a sudden an hour later they canceled the games. Just talking to Buzz Williams, because we had just passed by, we were talking, then Mike Kelly, we were talking, then just they canceled him. And it was just so many unknowns, because to be honest, I really didn't know the impact of the virus, just like probably everybody else, just kind of hearing about this virus. So he's shutting it down. And then the next thing is, getting back to campus, what's next for our guys, making sure the academic piece, doing the right things, because you didn't know that it would be, okay, you're shutting it down, off campus, all those things. And it went, and all of a sudden you start looking up, there were people losing lives. And then you go further, loss of jobs, and there's so many things that are going on in our society. And then the impact that it had, just you being with your family, staying at home, you not leaving the household, now really importance of wearing a mask, which they talked about, no, you need to wear a mask. And this, it was just, every day was just moving. Now to get to this point, to actually be headed back to the SEC tournament, I think it's amazing to be able to get to this point, to wear a mask and to be accountable to do that, to be able to play games with some fans in the arena. I thought that was a great thing to do. And I didn't think it would be easy at first, but we pulled it off. Yeah, man, it just to be able to play the game and have some fun in playing. You want to have fun, and it's still competitive. And I think the downside, even though you're dealing with COVID, you've had coaches losing jobs, and in these stressful times, and some on the surface might seem better than others, how they handle you winning games. You think everything's okay, but there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that you're dealing with. And but for us to be at this point, I think is great.
And I seem to remember you feeling like part of the reason the social justice movement got a little more amplified last year was obviously the heinous murder of George Floyd, but also sort of COVID stopping things and having a kind of a compound effect. Do you still feel that way? Do you feel like your role has changed somewhat in everything since then?
Well, I've always had it on my heart to try to do the right things, and just how. But I think oftentimes, when you work under the university's umbrella, you have to respect the space that you're in. And then the other part is you get to a point where it's like, at what point do you stand up and understand your impact and your role in society? And it's not to create hate, but it's to create a voice and say we all need to do this. Just like everybody on this Zoom call right now, you guys are part of, even if you don't look like me, you're still a part of, you're part of society, you're part of the walk. You have a voice, you have a pen, you have a paper, you can write, you can do the same thing. It doesn't make you no different than me just because your skin color is somewhat different, if that's the case. We're all the same people. We all have the same struggles. If your next door neighbor is struggling because of how they look, and you're able to cut your grass and wash your car and have a good time and go to the parks, then who are you? I mean, what's the difference? We're in this fight together. I was blessed to be raised by a woman that she was just struggling to make ends meet. She didn't have time to say, what color is that person? We trying to find a way to eat and survive and live. Didn't have time to do other stuff. So I was never taught that. And I think that's where we have to get in society. We have to get to that point, man. Because that's all of our right. It's just that's not just black people's issue. That's everybody's issue. And if you don't think it's your issue, I feel sorry for you and I feel sad for you.
Thanks, Cuonzo.
Eric?
Hey, Cuonzo, shifting it back to basketball a little bit. You mentioned just this time of year is about getting better, and you mentioned you're not also it's you can't change much this time of year. Do you find it easier because you have more proof of like, okay, this is the things we need to fix to get things done, or is it harder because you've been set in whatever ways you have?
Well, the one thing about it, when you have a team and a program, and I think this team is as good as any when we click on all cylinders, we can identify, not that I'm going to give you everything right now, we can identify as a team what the issue is. I can, boom, and probably the previous 2 years, not the first year with Michael Porter, because you still were good enough without Michael Porter. You had enough pieces. The previous 2 years, you probably just didn't have enough to keep getting over the hump with key guys out and injured. Well, you have enough as a whole right now with this group so you can identify what it is. So it's not as if we sit in the game, oh, this is bad, because at first we weren't making shots. Well, you're making shots now. Now it's just a matter of putting it all together. The absence of Jeremiah slowed us up somewhere because there's a guy that you're counting on. And that's a tough blow. You can make whatever excuse you want to make about it. It's a key part to what you're trying to do. But now he's back in the fold, ready to go. So I think our guys are just basketball. Now let's get back to basketball and having fun. But it's not a case of, man, we can't do this or we can't do that. We can do all the things to be successful. Now it's just a matter of consistently doing them.
Okay.
Cuonzo, during his time at Mizzou, Kobe Bryant has kind of made the transition successfully from being more of a three or perimeter player to more of a four and a post player. How do you think he successfully made that transition over the past couple of years? And why do you think it's paying off now in the form of kind of a bona fide inside scorer?
I think just to get down and get comfortable. So I think in high school, he played a lot on the perimeter facing up, even though most cases he's probably the biggest guy on the floor, but he was a skill player. You could play on the perimeter. His dad did a great job putting him in position to be able to do that. But, after a while, you get to a point like in talking with Kobe, okay, it's good to play on the perimeter, but also you're almost 6'8", 240+ pounds. We got to utilize that because similar to the conversation that I had with Jonte, when Jonte was 6'11", so skilled, but, his game was on the perimeter. If he faced up in the post, he was kind of off the blocks and shoot a jump shot. And then a year later, though we didn't get a chance to see it, he dominated in the post because he was so physical and strong around the rim, and he still had the other parts. And the same thing with Kobe, like you have to take advantage. You can't allow teams to switch smaller guards on you, and that's not an advantage for us. I mean, that can't happen. So it had to sink into him first to understand what we were saying as a staff until he comprehended that part. And then you got to obviously get used to playing the post because not many teach post stuff nowadays. So he had to get used to the fact that playing around the post, being aggressive, being physical. But the most important thing is to understand that there's a smaller guy, he's 6'1", 180 pounds, and he's defending me in the post. That has to sink in.
If I could ask a quick follow-up, RJ. At what point did Kobe kind of you mentioned Kobe started to comprehend that. At what point did that happen?
Well, when I say comprehend, not that he lacks intelligence, but to really absorb what I'm saying. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, look at that small guy defending you, man. That should be where I was from. That was considered an insult if this smaller guy's guarding me around the rim. So I think just practicing it, because we spent a lot of time, even late last year, just practicing. But he had to get used to it. He had to be in position. I can't think. I do remember the game. I can't remember the game, but he was posting up. Even when Tillman was on the floor, he's posting up because he had an advantage. Like, Coach, I got it, guy. And that was big. I think that was the biggest thing, him recognizing and him saying it. I don't remember the game, but him saying it from the sideline, Coach, I can post this guy up.
Got time for one or two more. Coach got ahead of practice. Dave?
Without a game on Saturday, you could have gone one of two ways of either, throttling it back or getting up and down more? What did you decide to do to approach that weekend?
We did a little bit more of getting up and down because, again, when you plan in season, it's especially Tuesday, Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, you have a day off in there, and then it's prep toward another team. And like most people, you're not doing a lot of running. And with this time off, we felt like we had to get back to the pace we were playing at, get back to the better place, pushing the ball, sprint up the floor. And I think that has a lot to do with X. And obviously, I think Bugs does a good job with it. But X getting up and down, using your speed, attacking the rim, making plays. Even if you get to the rim and he's not finishing strong or questionable call, the ref call or not, get to that rim and make plays. So now it forces everything else to go. So and then on the defensive side of the ball, consistently work to get our defense set. And then I felt like we had a good week.
Last question, Gabe.
Cuonzo, going into, a week from now, it's one and done situations only. How important is it this week for your staff and just for the guys' confidence to see, hey, a couple of good efforts to show them kind of, hey, we're capable of this going into tournament play?
I think it's very important. And I don't think we necessarily like effort. I think what we have to do is win the games, go out there and play. Because I've said it before, even if you lose a game, which I expect us to go out and try to win 2 games, you should be able to see, okay, that's what we look like. Even if the result ain't what you want, okay, I see what we're doing now. And I think our guys understand that part. And they're just playing a lot of effort, a lot of intensity, a lot of toughness, doing all those things that we talk about doing. And I think we'll get those things done.
That'll do it for today. Thanks to our SportsBeat KC production staff of Derek Donovan, Beth Welsh, Monty Davis, Jeff Rosen, Chris Fickett, and Savannah Smith. Links to stories about the Missouri Tigers can be found in the show notes and on kansascity.com. Hey, we've got a deal for you. For a limited time, you can subscribe to Sports Pass for 99 cents a month. That's right, 99 pennies a month. After 3 months, it auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless you cancel. And what a time to be a subscriber. The Royals are at spring training. March Madness is right around the corner. And when is it not Chiefs season? How do you get it? You go to kansascity.com/sportspass2020. That's kansascity.com/sportspass2020. You want more than just sports coverage? Check out the entire Kansas City Star product. Sports, news, features, commentary, and analysis, the whole thing. You get all the stories written by my talented colleagues, plus additional national news, sports, and business coverage with the e-edition. The details for all of these deals can be found at account.kansascity.com/subscribe. And if you're having trouble hunting down any of these offers, send me an email, bkerkhoff@kcstar.com, and I will get you to the right place. So whether it's the Sports Pass or the full subscription, you're getting and supporting the best sports and news coverage in Kansas City and helping us produce programs like SportsBeat KC. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back on Thursday with another episode.